Good morning. Welcome to River Community Church. My name is Sam. I'm one of the pastors here. Thrilled that you're here on this beautiful Sunday morning. If you haven't been here for a while, or if you're new here this morning, what you need to know is that we're in the series we're calling right now Serious Hope. It's a study of the book of Hebrews. We're walking through a chapter at a time, and what we've been noticing as we've been walking through this entire book of Hebrews is that there is this serious hope that we find in Jesus, this amazing thing that's so present and so obvious, and it's just this awesome thing to see. So it's been really fun to walk through it all summer. What's fun, though, is I was thinking about it this week. It's kind of like we've been watching this movie unfold all summer long, and there's all these plot twists, all these pieces that have been forming together, and we're coming to this final few chapters here. And as we get to these final chapters, there's this kind of summation that happens. It's like we've learned all this stuff, all this history from the Old Testament. We've put all these pieces together. And now, finally, at the end, at this last little piece here, we find what the real purpose is behind it. Like the oomph, like the climax of it all. Like there's this one overarching question that we're answering for ourselves to decide whether or not we're going to take this stuff seriously and have this hope really in us. So that's where we're at this morning. We're in chapters 10 and 11. We're going to kind of overview both of them, and we're going to get into it. But that means that I have a question for you guys. It's a question that isn't an easy one. It's kind of a difficult question if you take it seriously and answer it honestly. And I'm going to tell you what that question is, but as we're going through it this morning and as we're taking this time in the service, I want you to try and answer this question for yourself by the end of the service. And I don't want you to just give the answer that's the nice one. Not just the answer that you feel like you're supposed to say. I want you to answer this question really where you're at. Really what you're feeling. Really what you think is happening in your life. And that's this. This question is, what are you living for? What are you living for? What are you living for? It's a hard question. It's a difficult one. And because it's such a difficult one, I thought we'd take a moment and ask God to help us and have Him help us as we answer that question for ourselves. So would you take a moment and pray with me? Dear God, we are incredibly grateful that we can be here and worship you. As we spend some time answering this question of what we're living for, God, I ask that we wouldn't just kind of give the easy answer, that we'd really kind of search ourselves and figure out what that really is right now in our life. But then I ask, God, that you would help us to be open to changing it, to shaping ourselves, to really live for you. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So before we jump into Hebrews, first I want to talk about this other story that happened a long time ago. It's about a guy, and the guy's name is Job. And Job is this very interesting character. How many of you ever read the book of Job? A couple of you? It's a really long book to read, okay? It's like 60-some chapters, and it goes on and on and on, but it's crazy. As I was reading through it, I've been reading through it recently, and there's this really fun, crazy thing that happens and terrible thing that happens. The guy named Job, all right, he is very wealthy, right? He's very well off. He's been taken care of. God has blessed him in amazing ways. And what happens out of this story is that there's this sort of cosmic bet that happens, okay? This cosmic bet in the background. There's God and there's the devil. And the devil goes to God one day and he says to God, hey, Job, this servant of yours, the only reason he's really great to you, the only reason he follows you and serves you and hasn't cursed you is because you've blessed his socks off. Like you've made him feel so good. Life is so great for him. I bet if you took those blessings away for just a moment, he would totally turn back on it and curse you. And God's like, I don't think so, but go ahead, have at it. So in this crazy set of circumstances, in the course of like a single day, Job loses his family, his riches, all of the livestock, all of the crops burned to the ground. Everything goes terribly. He literally goes to this point of having nothing left. And nothing happens. Job does not curse God. Job does not turn back on his character. So the devil goes back to God and he says, well, you just haven't let me touch his body. His body's still healthy and fine. If I take away his health, then something will happen. So God says, have at it. And so the devil takes Job and he basically fills him with sores from head to toe, covered in these atrocious sores. So literally everything in his life, his wealth, his health, every last piece of it, his family is gone and deteriorated and brought to nothing. Now, as this happens, some of Job's friends begin to come and talk with him and argue with him. And basically what it amounts to is they keep on saying to Job, Job, you have to have done something wrong. Like, God is a good God. You have to have done some kind of thing wrong if you are for some reason having these bad things happen to you. God wouldn't turn his favor away from you just for doing nothing. Like, something has to have gone wrong. And Job continues to plead his case over and over and over again, saying, no, I haven't. Nothing has been wrong. I haven't cursed God. I haven't done anything bad. I am a stand-up character guy. I will stand on that. In fact, over and over again, he takes his case to God. And he says to God, he says and pleads to him, I want to take my case to you. I want to stand before you and plead my case. Now, over a time, it's a long book, a bunch of different things and discussions happen, and Job basically continues to stand on that firmness that he doesn't curse God, but he says, I am of upright character. Why has this happened to me? And near the end of the book, finally, after listening to all these other things and these people talk, we hear God speak. And this is what he says. He says, Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind. Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you, and you must answer them. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined its dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? What supports its foundations, and who laid its cornerstone as the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? Who kept the sea inside its boundaries as it burst from the womb, and as I clothed it with clouds and wrapped it in thick darkness? For I locked it behind barred gates, limiting its shores. I said, this far and no farther will you come. Here your proud waves must stop. Have you ever commanded the morning to appear and caused the dawn to rise in the east? Have you made daylight spread to the ends of the earth to bring an end to the night's wickedness? As the light approaches, the earth takes shape like clay pressed beneath a seal. It is robed in brilliant colors. The light disturbs the wicked and stops the arm that is raised in violence. And it goes on and on. And we hear this and we see this. And Job is given this reality check of who God is. And as you read this, it's like stunning. Like, it's breathtaking to take in just who God is, just what he's capable of. This poetic imagery of what he has done is mind-boggling. It's beautiful. It even causes Job himself, who hadn't cursed God, to take a step back and humble himself. Job, he lived through riches. He lived through rags and horrors. And then again, he had riches because after this period passes, God again blesses him and multiplies it even more. But consider it for a second. Job, while he never cursed God, was caught in this dire circumstance where he had to ask himself, what's he living for? Was it possessions? They were all gone. There were none of them left. He had none of it. Was it his family? They were wiped away. And even his wife told him at one point, curse God and die. So maybe wasn't living for her. Fame? The opposite was the case. Now everybody thought he had done something wrong. Was it his health? I mean, he was covered in stuff, right? It wasn't good. What was Job living for? He had to consider this. He had to think about it. What are you living for? What are you living for? Because we all know it, like life is life, right? Life happens. That's the saying for a reason. Life happens. Things will go great. Things will go terribly. We know this, yet we all have this tendency to grab hold of something, right? Grab hold of one thing and want to live for that thing. Whatever it might be. Over the past number of weeks, I've had the chance to talk to some people who recently went down to Honduras and had a mission trip there. And it's always really fun for me because a few years back, I went on the same trip and spent some time down there, got to know some people. So it's really fun to catch up and hear how things are going, what's new, what's changed, and what projects they worked on, and all those kinds of things. It's really fun. But without fail, no matter what, there'll be some kind of part of the topic that'll come up, some piece of it There'll be this one thing that's just this resounding thing, no matter what. There's one enduring thought, it's this. It's that they had so little compared to us, and yet they had so much joy. They had so little of a million things, but they had so much joy, more than we have. And it takes people by surprise. They're amazed by it. They're wowed by it. And there's actually a temptation there. There's this tempting thing when we talk like that. It's tempting to think that if maybe we just got rid of all of our stuff and basically just got rid of everything that makes us different than them, or maybe even moved down there, right, we'd feel the same way. Like we'd have that same joy. It's tempting. Except it's not necessarily true. Our stuff can absolutely become a distraction. We all know this. Like, stuff gets in the way. We want the stuff. It makes us feel like it's going to be good, but it doesn't. It's a distraction. But getting rid of it doesn't mean we'll have the same kind of joy that they had. It's not necessarily true. There's more to it than that. And just so you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. Like maybe some of you here are supposed to go move to Honduras and get rid of everything. You might be. I'm not going to tell you not to. But here's the thing. Before you do, before you make a radical change thinking that it's going to make you be filled with all kinds of joy and there's good stuff in life, make certain that you have an incredibly good handle on the question, what am I living for? What am I living for? It's actually not that much different than what the Hebrews were dealing with. In Hebrews 10, verse 1, it says this. It says, the old system under the law of Moses was only a shadow, a dim preview of the good things to come, not the good things themselves. They'd been tempted to make the law like the thing. Like if we just follow the law and do this sacrificial system, it'll be all good. That's what's most important in life. But no, it's not. It was just this dim preview, this shadow of what was to come. It's not the point. And so they were experiencing that, and what you guys got to know is we're experiencing this stuff all the time. Like we have these dim previews everywhere in our life. It's always happening. We're always experiencing this. So maybe like you see a child, right? And the child walks up and they are just so happy. Like there's a brightness in their eyes, there's a sweetness, or you're holding an infant and there's the innocence that's there. And you see that and you're like, I want that. I want that again. Or maybe you see the preview in a friend or a coworker. Like you just want to be around them. They're just really good people. You enjoy being close to them because you can see something in them. There's just this thing that you wish you could have for yourself. Maybe it's in grandma, right? Like grandmas are the best. Like I remember going across the road when I was growing up, and I'd go into the kitchen where the farm was, and I'd go into the house, and there'd be the smell of apple pie, and like she'd be peeling apple peels, and I'd eat the apple peels while she made the apple pie. Like that's a dim preview of heaven to me. Like that's amazing. I don't know if you've experienced anything like that, but that's great. Like grandmas are like that. The people that went to Honduras, they saw this dim preview, this joy that they wanted. They want. It's there. There's something there. But what is it? What is that thing? What is it? What's this good thing we're seeing a dim preview of? It's not their health. There are people that are very sick that still have it. It's not their possessions or lack thereof. Whatever it is, we want to find out what it is. It's important. The Hebrews, it says in Hebrews 10, 32 through 34, they endured some really hard stuff for it. It says this, think back on those early days when you first learned about Christ. Remember how you remained faithful, even though it meant terrible suffering. Sometimes you were exposed to public ridicule and were beaten. And sometimes you helped others who were suffering the same things. You suffered along with those who were thrown into jail. And when all you owned was taken from you, you accepted it with joy. You knew there were better things waiting for you that will last forever. There's something waiting for them that would last forever, and they endured some serious stuff for it. Maybe you have too. Maybe you're here this morning and you've been through the ringer. There's just been some stuff. It's been hard. It's exhausting. And sometimes you come to the point where you ask yourself and you think to yourself, what am I dealing with this for? Why do I have to go through this stuff? It's so hard. It's so difficult. I'm exhausted. You just feel like you're living under pressure all the time. It's actually, I think that's such a huge theme. We're actually going to talk about that soon. In a couple of weeks, September 10th, we're going to have another Epic, which is like these events with small TED Talk type things, and it's going to be here, I think 7 p.m. here. But it's going to be called Epic Under Pressure. Because all of us, I feel like, live under pressure all the time. Like, am I right? Yes? There's all kinds of pressures always. We're going to talk to a family who lives under a lot of pressure and talk about how their faith impacts that. We're going to talk with a counselor who is going to give us some thoughts on how to live life with their faith under the pressure of depression and anxiety. And then we're going to talk to somebody who lives under a high-stakes pressure situation often and how this person deals with that and lives for that. And we'll announce who those people are over the next couple of weeks. But I'm really excited about it because that's the reality of our lives, isn't it? Like, we're always living under pressure. We're always living under pressure. What are you willing to live under pressure for? What are you willing to suffer for? What aren't you willing to suffer for? I mean, like this, right? If you want to check out this line here, are you willing to stand in a line for a long, long time for something to eat? Like, if I go here, I am not standing in that line. I will go to like Walgreens and grab a granola bar before I stand in that long of a line for burgers and custard and shakes. Like, they have to be amazing. Like, if I'm going to stand in a line like that, it has to be for like this explosion of utter amazing utopian goodness in my mouth, okay? It has to be that good to stand in a line for that long for some food. Like, that has to be that good to me. Is anybody else with me on that? Like, lines are not worth it? Okay, good. I'm glad you're with me. How about this? A bathroom. How long would you stand in a line for the one on the right? Not very long, right? How about this? Like, for me, I'm a guy, like, I'll just go to the bathroom. I don't have willpower, okay? My wife has willpower, okay? She will wait. If there's a possibility of a clean bathroom not too far in the distance, she will wait. Back when she used to visit me in school, we were dating long distance, she would travel on the train from Milwaukee down to Crawfordsville, Indiana, and it was most of the time like a 6-hour train ride. Often it was like 8 or 9 because there were delays and whatever else. She never once in those 4 years used the bathroom on the train. That's amazing. Like, I am so impressed by her, and she drinks a lot of water, so I can't believe it. But if there's the promise, like, she'd get to the school, and I give her a big hug, and she'd be like, I'm so excited to see you, but we got to go back and go to use the bathroom. And she'd do it. Like, she'd wait. She'd endure it. She had way more willpower than I do. The next one is this. Work, a job. What kind of suffering will you endure for a job? Maybe it's got to have a lot of pay for you to endure a lot of suffering. Maybe it has to have a good working environment, or maybe just the purpose behind it has to be important. So you'll work really hard as long as you believe in what they're for or what they're doing. Depends. Maybe not. Maybe, I don't know, I kind of like to work. I don't care what I'm doing. I just like to work. So you endure a lot of suffering for it. A long-distance relationship, that's a fun one. We don't have those phones anymore, but like that was a thing, right? You'd sit there and wait for that person to call. It's hard. How about faith? What are you willing to endure suffering for your faith? The Hebrews, they were willing. They were living for something, and they were willing to endure suffering for it. What is it exactly? In Hebrews 10:35-36, it says, "So do not throw away this confident trust in the Lord. Remember the great reward it brings you. Patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that He has promised." Hebrews, they had this confident trust, this confident hope that God had something for them to inherit. This thing that was going to come to them. It's called faith, this serious hope. And Hebrews 11:1 defines it. It says, faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. Faith shows us that what we hope for is actually real, like as hard as this, real. It's something. It's evidence. It's the substance that while we can't see it, we can trust it. And what's fascinating is this verse, that verse that was just up, is an amazing verse. Like, people quote it all the time. But what I like is the verse that comes next. The next verse is this. It's Hebrews 11:2. Through their faith, the people in days of old earned a good reputation. What's wild is that reputation, and you've probably experienced this. You know certain people who just have that reputation and you can point to their faith that shows it. But it's almost like this substance, this proof that that faith is real. It's one of these ways that faith can prove itself. The people that Hebrews is talking about, their hope that they're talking about has something to do with this. It says this in the verse 3. It says, by faith we understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command, and that what we now see did not come from anything that can be seen. It was a faith in God, something we can't measure, can't fully comprehend. There are people throughout history who have placed their faith in this God who is bringing things to order and existence with a purpose, a noble God who is beyond anything we can see or touch or comprehend completely. These people's faith, their confident hope, it produced this reputation. This really good reputation, and Hebrews lists these people off. It's Abel and Enoch and Noah and Abraham and Sarah, these people in the Old Testament. And it says this in Hebrews 11:13-16. All these people died still believing what God had promised them. They did not receive what was promised, but they saw it all from a distance and welcomed it. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth. Obviously, people who say such things are looking forward to a country they can call their own. If they had longed for the country they came from, they could have gone back, but they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. What are you living for? Like, really? What are you living for? Is it something heavenly? Is it not? For these faithful men and women of old, it was something heavenly, something bigger than themselves, something far off but worth the wait. That's what they were living by faith for. Now, earlier, at the beginning of the message, you heard Job, right? Where there's this long thing that God says, and it's utterly amazing to read it. It's beautiful. What you're about to hear next is, I think, one of the best sermons ever given in the history of the world. And it's so good that I really want you to just hear it. So take a moment, relax, wake up a little bit if you're falling asleep, breathe, and I want you to take in just how amazing this next thing is. Hebrews is just absurd, and it's talking about this faith in something that is so important, something that's far off and heavenly and bigger than themselves and what it results in. So breathe, enjoy yourself, and hear this. You ready? Yeah? Nod your heads. Are you awake? Yeah? Good? All right. It says it was by faith that Abraham offered Isaac as a sacrifice when God was testing him. Abraham, who had received God's promises, was ready to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, even though God had told him, Isaac is a son through whom your descendants will be counted. Abraham reasoned that if Isaac died, God was able to bring him back to life again. And in a sense, Abraham did receive his son back from the dead. It was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future to his sons, Jacob and Esau. It was by faith that Jacob, when he was old and dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and bowed in worship as he leaned on his staff. It was by faith that Joseph, when he was about to die, said confidently that the people of Israel would leave Egypt. He even commanded them to take his bones with them when they left. It was by faith that Moses' parents hid him for 3 months when he was born. They saw that God had given them an unusual child, and they were not afraid to disobey the king's command. It was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to share the oppression of God's people. Instead of enjoying the fleeting pleasures of sin, he thought it was better to suffer for the sake of Christ than to own the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to his own great reward. It was by faith that Moses left the land of Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He kept right on going because he kept his eyes on the one who was invisible. It was by faith that Moses commanded the people of Israel to keep the Passover and sprinkle blood on the doorposts so the angel of death would not kill their firstborn son. It was by faith that the people of Israel went right through the Red Sea as though it were on dry ground, but when the Egyptians tried to follow, they were all drowned. It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. How much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of faith, of Gideon and Barak and Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back from death, but I have to stop there for a second. All those people earn these incredible reputations by their faith. They also receive tons of blessings in the here and now, the present. It's this remarkable picture of God's goodness and faithfulness to people that have faith. Except there's a but. There's a subordinating conjunction, a conditional statement. It's a word that means this is not a perfect rule. There's an exception to the rule. Just because you follow God doesn't mean you'll overflow with blessings here and now. It says, but others were tortured, refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. They placed their hope in a better life after the resurrection. Some were jeered at, and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in prison. Some died by stoning. Some were sawed in half, and others were killed with the sword. Some went about wearing skins of sheep and goats, destitute and oppressed and mistreated. They were too good for this world. Wandering over deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. For God had something better in mind for us, so that they would not reach perfection without us. In 3 paragraphs, Hebrews shatters the lie that we are blessed by God only if good things happen to us now. Prosperity in the present is not a God-given promise. It's a sometimes after effect of a life lived by faith. This is one of the main questions the book of Job wrestles with. That's why we talked about it. But we do not always clearly see the effects of faith now when it comes to a person's possessions or their lifestyle. We're in no position to judge if someone is blessed by God based on their wealth or their health or any other thing. So again, the question comes, what are you living for? What are you living for? Why keep this faith if it doesn't promise prosperity now? What's the point? Everything we want, we're so used to getting now, right? We're so used to getting as soon as we say it. It's just something we've been conditioned to believe right here. But did you know? Did you know that the really good things, the truly good stuff, they take time? Some of them, the best things, the things that the good stuff now are only shadows of, dim previews of, they won't come until the heavenly kingdom of God, until the end. So I'll ask again, what are you living for? The stuff? The job with the bonus? The all-star kids in their sports? The approval from other people? None of these things are bad. They're just normal stuff. But none of them are worth devoting your life to. They're not. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live like what the world offers is enough. It's just not. I'll take the good things that are given now as blessings because there's plenty of them. There's some good stuff. God is always showering us with blessings if we choose to see them. But those things are never going to satisfy like what we want them to. They just won't. That thing is never going to be enough. That person is never going to be enough. That job is never going to be enough to completely satisfy you. It just won't. They're not enough. What are you living for? If it's anything short of faith in God's eternal kingdom, I hate to say it, but if it's not, then it's not going to be a very fun life. You're going to have a lot of time of being disappointed. And I hate that for you. I don't want that for you. Maybe you're sitting here this morning and thinking, yeah, I get it. I get it. I totally understand. Like, this is the answer, right? This is the thing that we've been told forever. Follow God, live for Jesus, live for heaven. I've heard it before. Maybe it's helpful to be reminded and you're sitting like, you're like, yeah, that's right. I should live for eternity. Not what's happening now. I get that. It's an awesome reminder, but what difference is it going to make for me today? What difference is it going to make for my week this week? I think it makes this difference. When life happens, like it happened to Job, like I'm sure it happened to you when you struggle, when it stinks, when the job doesn't go how you wanted, when health stuff creeps in, when you least expect it, when you sit down and you watch the news like I watched it last night and you see this hate-based protests elicit the absolute worst in humanity erupting in these acts of terror and death. When the world seems to be falling apart, your world or the whole stinking thing. Isn't that the point? Isn't that exactly it? That we have this source of hope, this ability to live for more, to care for people, to love people, to have a purpose, even when every signifier around us tells us that we shouldn't? The serious hope we have, it allows us to live for something bigger than ourselves in the here and the now, no matter the circumstances. It's a hope worth living for. So live for it. Live for it. I sent out an email earlier this week. I think some of you probably got it. If you didn't, if you want to get those emails, you can put your name on the connection card in front of you and your email address. But the email said this: over the past few weeks, I have seen so many people do the most amazing things, like care for and be kind and generous to people that they're like their neighbors or their friends, and in some cases, people they don't even know. Like they don't even know these people, and yet they're going out of their way for them. It's amazing. That's the kind of church we have. That's the kind of people you're sitting next to. Like you look next to you, that's that person. Live like that. Live like that, no matter if things are going well for you or terribly for you, no matter what, because you have a hope that's way better than what's right here and right now. You don't need the pleasures of right now always, because you know something better is coming. And it's worth it. So incredibly worth it. And if you have this hope, show it. If you're here and you've been baptized before, you know how big of a deal that is to walk in the water and to say to a group of people, I believe in Jesus and I want to follow him. This is my life. I have this bigger hope. If you haven't, show it. It's a powerful moment to take a step in your faith, to say, I believe in Jesus, and I have a hope that's bigger than this world. It's better than this world, so I'm not going to try and find all my satisfaction in it. I'm going to live for God. If you want to, Pastor Jack will be in the lighthouse. If you go out these doors and around the building, the next office over there, he'll be able to answer any of your questions. It's like a 5-minute short meeting talking about that. But show it. I'm going to close with this. You've probably had maybe a good week, maybe a tough week. You've had some life struggles. You've had some high moments. But if you're here this morning and you realize just how fickle life can be, and the ups and the downs and the loops and all the stuff you just can't predict, and how hard it is and how good it can be, but how much those good things can turn to tough things very quickly. If you're here and that's what you've experienced, remember that if you follow Jesus, you're living for more. And you can live that way. You do not have to be defined by your circumstances right now. And if you want to live that way, starting now and going into this week, I'm going to say a prayer, and you can pray for that desire to do that and the conviction and strength to do that in the here and now. Would you pray with me? Dear God, thank you that you love us. Thank you that we have a hope that is so much bigger than what's here now. And thank God, thank you, because there's plenty of stuff that's going wrong in our lives and in this world. And if that's what we had to hope in, we'd be at a loss. But we have a bigger hope than that. We have a bigger faith than that. So God, we ask that you would give us the courage and the strength and the endurance to live for that hope rather than getting caught up in everything that's swirling around us. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.